So welcome this afternoon to the Mayoral Regional Council meeting, the second last of the year. Civic affirmation is: we, the councillors of the Mayoral region, declare that we will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of our community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions invested in us to the best of our skill and judgment. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Mayoral regional community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. Now, this meeting has been audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised to do so by council. Public address, have your say. All speakers are requested to ensure their comments are relevant to the particular agenda item. The chairperson may withdraw the privilege to speak where a speaker makes personal remarks or criticisms or use abusive or inappropriate language. Speakers do not enjoy any special protection arising from comments made during this council meeting and should therefore refrain from making defamatory comments or personal defamatory statements against any individual. Could you please turn your mobiles on to silent or off, please? Thank you. Be seated. Councillors, that's a bit loud. Sorry, I might be coughing a bit during the day, but number 3, apology, Councillor Ian Tyler can't make it. Can I have a remover and a second? Councillor Witters, Councillor Robinson, all those in favour? Thank you. Any disclosures of interest? Nope. Public, have your say. We've got Annette Killer. Is Annette here? Yes, please come to the podium there. Yep, I think they've got a clock going to be up there for 5 minutes, please, Annette. So from when you start.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm here today speaking on behalf of Climate Action Armidale, and I'm speaking in relation to the motion of climate emergency declaration that was unanimously agreed at the last council meeting, 23rd of October. We've not been able to prepare a detailed response at this time because the recommendations come through to you recently, and we're in preparation for the global climate strike and sit-in for solidarity that's going to be held this Friday at 9 a.m. at Central Park in recognition of the climate emergency we are in. I wish to speak to item 11.1, which aims to bring Clause A of that motion into reality. Clause A originally read that a report be prepared and presented to Council by February 2020 with input from a working group of the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee and the community on the current initiatives and additional future actions that can be undertaken in the short, medium and long term. To 1, reduce greenhouse emissions, aiming by 2020 for no additional contribution from our region to the global temperature rise. 2, adapt to current and anticipated climate change impacts that are currently happening. 3, reduce atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases. So the recommendation to Council is to action this, but to alter the date to July 2020. And Climate Action Armidale is obviously in strong support of the actioning of this in a feasible manner and taking into account the current water shortages and bushfire situation. However, we strongly believe that this must be achieved at a much earlier date and that it must be finalised by a date that enables the report to be taken into account for next year's 2020-2021 operational budget, for the 2040 strategic plan, and in the context of the sustainability green print. With respect to the expression of interest process for the community membership of the working group, there is considerable energy in our community and system who are likely to come forward, as indicated by the nearly 2,000 who signed the Climate Emergency Declaration and the now 200 members of Climate Action Armidale. Climate Action Armidale is also available to facilitate community engagement on this matter. The climate emergency is here, and the community energy is here, and it is here now. We would call on Council to facilitate and enable that. To this end, Climate Action Armidale could provide a report to the next Environmental Sustainability Committee for their consideration when discussing the terms of reference for the working group and to action that. In summary, let's keep working together to create a good process for bringing Clause A into action, but the report deadline for Council should not be postponed beyond April 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Okay, moving on to item 6.
Yeah, no, I'd like to move a procedural motion that we consider item 11.1 before the mayoral minute.
Do I have a seconder? Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, moving on 11.1. No, sorry, we'll do 6 because we've still got to do confirmation of minutes. So, you've all had a chance to look at your minutes. Any person wish to move and second? Councillor Martin, Councillor Witters. Any problems with it, errors? Okay, I'll put that to vote. Those in favour? Carried. 11.1, which is the response to the climate emergency resolution. And that's in 4 parts. So can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Gray. Councillor... Sorry, I looked up and I saw Councillor Gray. So, okay, Councillor Gray, Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Connor, I looked up and I saw Councillor Gray with a hand up after I asked for a mover. It's my call. So, Councillor Gray.
First of all, I'd like to thank our speaker for the comments. And I do very much passionately believe in the climate change initiative. This date of July seems to be the contentious issue for the report. Yet at the last meeting, this was the area that I had concerns around, knowing that it would be physically impossible even to do it by March or April because of the mechanisms that have to go through, the hoops that have to be jumped through, that's dictated by the Code of Meeting Practice and procedures within Council. And that in itself was the logistics of not being able to meet that date, hence the reason why I put forward the amendment at the last meeting. I do believe that by July, it's certainly the end of this financial year, it gives ample opportunity to put together a working group, get the terms of reference going. The resources of Council, due to the drought and the fires, are already under enormous stress. And yes, and that could well be from the climate change. I believe that we need to look at something that is a fair and doable date, and I believe that by July 2020 that is fair.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor O'Connor.
My amendment is to paragraph A, where it says that a report be prepared and presented to Council by July 2020. That be amended, the date July removed and the word April substituted.
Councillor Gray and Councillor Robinson, are you happy with it? So sorry, you have to make it will have to be a full amendment, Councillor O'Connor.
That is a full amendment.
So do you not have a seconder for your amendment? So Councillor sorry? So Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Connor.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, we've heard from Ms Kalar. We unanimously, notwithstanding the attempt by Councillor Gray on the last occasion to delay the matter with her amendment, which was lost, we unanimously declared a climate emergency, and that's what we have. And there's as Ms. Collier indicated, we have a community that's absolutely on alert about climate change. It is not going to take us that long to find a working group to get on with this and to identify the things that we can do to assist this community meet the climate challenge that we're facing right now. We are in the middle of an emergency, and look, we didn't pass a motion to move deck chairs on the Titanic. We passed a motion to get on with this, and I think it's completely cynical to put the report date straight after the closing of the 2021 budget. That's what this is about. It's quite clear. And I ask my fellow councillors to support the original. Well, we've actually looked at a compromise of going from February to March to April so that we can get the final recommendations in by May and that they can be known before the budget process is complete. We need to act on this. We'll make ourselves liars if we pass this motion by kicking the can down the road to July 2020. There's not a lot more to be said about this. We just make ourselves look like a laughing stock if we put it off till July. We don't need that much time, and this is just giving us more and more of the reputation that we already have of being a do-nothing council. So let's get on with this. April should be the day.
So, Councillor O'Brien, once Councillor O'Connor turns the mic off, Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, I support this amendment of Councillor O'Connor's. As she said, this isn't a climate emergency. It's not a climate irritation. It's a climate emergency. There is so much support to help us implement all kinds of projects. We've only recently gone to a workshop for the New South Wales Government's Net Zero and Climate Resilience group who are down here. They had masses of information about how we can implement things easily, and they've told us how much support we're able to get. They have a web page in which there is masses of ways to help us adapt, to provide resources, different climate projects that are already being tried somewhere else. Grant programs are begging us to ask for grants to help councils plan to make a more resilient climate policy. So I think we should move on this. We don't want to be an isolated council. If we're just having not only kicking it down the road, but if our only aim is to get advice to the community about how they can address climate change, and we don't do anything ourselves, this is not leadership. This is the best kind of changes happen at an institution, a legislative and a structural level, and that's what we should be doing, leading the community, not just telling them what to do. We tell them what to do and we don't do anything ourselves. I think that's a kind of a, why would they act? So I think we should treat it like the emergency that it is, not lag behind in this area, and embrace the changes that are necessary, and I commend the amendment. Thank you.
A speaker against? If not, I'll put that.
Hang on.
Councillor Witters.
I'll have a chat here. I'm a little bit conflicted since the last meeting, only on the fact that since the last meeting, the climate emergency has gotten stronger with fires and drought, but then that takes away the resources to be able to do this, what was the original motion of February, which I voted for at the last meeting, which I think needs to be done as soon as possible. So on one hand, we need this to be done as soon as possible, which I think the April date is a good compromise, but on the other hand, do we have the resources to do it at the moment to get it done properly? Because I know a lot of the resources are going into the management of fire and water saving and all that sort of stuff. So we've really got to weigh up as a council whether we want this done by the time that we set, which is fair enough. I agree with that, but also whether we have the resources due to the climate sort of stuff at the moment. So whether the timeline of July is too far, or whether the compromise of April in regards to that is, and whether we need to even maybe compromise and maybe go to May. It's something that we need to look at. So just throwing those thoughts out there with the amendment. But as I said, I think something still needs to be done very quickly, but whether the resources and the time can be put into it at the moment might not be able to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. The CEO just informed me that it will be extremely difficult to get it done by the beginning of April with exactly the points that Councillor Witters raised. So, Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Connor, we still need, this will require resources. So I think Councillor Witters already made the point. So, Councillor Robinson.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Climate Action Armidale for their willingness to help, including helping us achieve the strategies needed to meet this emergency. And I'd also like to point out that despite what everybody says, this wasn't meant to be an expensive or resource-intensive exercise. The working group we set up could provide much of the expertise. They could seek additional funds and additional resources and work with other agencies, such as the New South Wales Government Net Zero Climate Resilience Team, who hosted that excellent workshop in Armidale on the 19th of November. And this was one of our opportunities, and we really cannot afford to lose the opportunity to work with the state government while they're interested and willing to help us do it. And we talked about being a can-do council. We had council that can do, and so surely we can deal with drought and bushfires, and actually just set up one working group to help with the climate emergency. We've talked about leadership, about reducing our contribution to global warming so that we can pass on our expertise and encourage other communities and jurisdictions to do this. If we don't do this and don't set in action a plan by the time we have it's time to formulate our operational plan and our budget, even though it might not need much resources, then surely we've lost the plot. What will happen is that if it's not in next year's operational plan, it won't happen before the end of this term of council. And really, that isn't what anybody wants here. We declared a climate emergency, not a climate non-emergency where nobody does anything within the remit of this council. And remember, think of all the benefits that can come from this community, from actually acting on climate change. And I again point out another New South Wales government strategy that is ripe for the plucking and would really benefit our industry. The New South Wales government's electricity strategy released last Friday. It finally recognises something that most of us who've actually looked into this have known for years, or known for some time, that renewables are cheaper than coal. And the New South Wales government strategy mentions this and talks about this strategy reducing bills by $40 per household per year and driving $8 billion in investment, in private investments. And it's expected to create 1,200 new jobs, most of which will be in regional New South Wales. If we do nothing, if we don't set up a group, if we've no resources ourselves, then we should make use of the very willing community resources to help us achieve these aims instead of sitting there and doing nothing for the next term in council. That isn't what the spirit of the emergency was. Our working group could help drive innovations such as peer-to-peer energy trading, taking advantage of our plentiful current and future wind, solar and pumped hydro, and our government-owned energy network. It's just the ideal opportunity, which, if we wait till July, we'll be throwing away. And certainly, having lost a month of actually doing very little, I expected that 1 week past the emergency, once we'd endorsed the working group, it would be set up. Is it that difficult to set up a working group? I really don't know. I would have thought you just set out the terms of reference, you send it off to the Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Committee, and then we start advertising for people. Resources, why does that take 6 months, for heaven's sake? I really don't know, and if that's our can't-do attitude, I'm really, really surprised that we even bothered to declare a climate emergency in the first place. We've already lost so much time with the delays to the green print. We really, really cannot afford to lose any more time. I mean, I will admit that now we've lost a month, maybe April is a better day. But surely we can set up a working group, and then the working group can do most, if not all, of the work. We don't need resources from council. There are plenty of skilled people in this community who can do the work, who can actually address the council emergency that council doesn't want, that council staff don't want to do. The sooner we act, the better. And we really don't need this delay until the next year's operational plan and budget have been passed. If we do, we'll lose the impetus, and that is not what was intended. So please support this amendment.
A speaker against the amendment? I'll put...
Can I just ask a quick question? Because I wasn't ready for this amendment, to be honest. So we, basically speaking, we're talking about 2 months. Is that what we're talking about?
We said February in the last month, and come back with July.
Yeah, it's coming back from, the proposal from staff was July. The amendment is to bring it back to April. So...
Okay, so thank you. I just think over the big picture, I think, yeah, I can't see 2 months making a hell of a lot of difference over our last couple of 100 years, whatever we've been doing myself. I think we're better off going to this hand in hand together. But yeah, I can't see that a couple of months is going to make too much difference. So thank you.
So speaker against? If not, you have the right to reply, Councillor Gray.
I'd like to propose a further amendment, which was basically that we also asked the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee to review the draft terms of reference, because I think, and we also involved Project Zero in an advisory capacity rather than having them waste another month reviewing the issue. Perhaps if anybody will actually, or if this amendment's lost, I'll foreshadow another amendment.
Okay, we'll leave it until we where the seat is. Councillor Gray?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I'm at a bit of a loss to see how the proposed timeline that's in the report underneath the recommendation can be changed. There is a report to come from the Working Party in June. And maybe that's more the appropriate month to have is in June. If we have a meeting and there is enough people in the Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting to have a quorum, then we can actually start to move forward. It has been noted the past couple of meetings we haven't been able to attain that. The timeline that's presented here, I believe, is reasonable. Now, if there is a report, and in response to the comment from Councillor O'Connor regarding the July being after the budget date or something similar to that, if we're getting a report from the Working Party to come to the June meeting, that might be more workable, but and there's some work that can be done in the background. My concern around having something presented in such a rush and in April is that we're asking for short, medium and long-term initiatives and additional future actions on those 3 points. Now, that takes a lot of consideration. It takes consultation. It takes inclusiveness. And it's not going to happen over a 2-week period or a 3-week period. If we're going to do this and we're serious about climate change, then give it the respect that it deserves rather than just rush so that we can just say, right, here's a report given to council. Well, I would prefer to have a high quality report that is inclusive of all those points and the short, medium and long term, than something that's rushed together and then we have people say, well, we didn't have enough time to put an expression of interest so we could be on the Working Party, etc., because that's the type of thing that keeps coming back. So let's follow the process and let's make sure that in the meantime, in the background, we're putting together strategies, initiatives that we can bring to the Working Party. So therefore, I believe that the date of April is it's logistically unachievable. Emotionally, I would love to have it. I would love to be able to see us produce a high quality report by April. I cannot see it happening. in that the timeline there, unless somebody here can put forward a timeline that is doable, then, you know, I just cannot see it working. The review by the project 030, and then that coming to adoption by July 2020, that doesn't mean that we can't still be receiving the report in June. If it's ready before that, good. Let's have a report in May. But don't expect miracles out of nothing. If we could make it rain, we would make it rain. We cannot pull rabbits out of a hat just because we want it to be so, and we're emotionally driven to have it so. Yes, we are in a climate emergency. Let's do it right. Let's not make a hash of it by rushing through it.
Okay, I'll put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment? Those against? That's 4, 5 each. So, Adam, thank you, Councillor Gladley. So it was 5-all. If it's 5-all in the casting vote, I do not support I stay with status quo, which is July. So amendment lost. So Councillor Robinson, you had a foreshadowed motion?
Yeah, well, I will put another amendment, but I'll make a slightly different amendment, given Councillor Gray's argument that if anybody else can put a better timeline, then we should do so. I would like to invite Climate Action Armadale to put forward a realistic timeline that is doable and has the support of the community as well as council. If I can get a second for that.
Councillor O'Connor? So,
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, although I voted with the wisdom of the right and the left over here, I'd have to say that we've just voted on a timeline. You can't then move another motion to vote on the timeline again. I think we've got to stay with the timeline we've got. We can't then turn around and try and change the timeline because we want to bring Climate Action Armadale involved. You can't do that. We've already voted.
thank you, Councillor Bailey. I was trying to see I didn't pick up all of the proposed motion. That's why I was waiting to see if it came up. So, have you? Is it, Councillor Robinson, were you proposing that we amend the time yet, the submission date? Because we've already decided that.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Robinson, even we can't have your Climate Armadale setting dates. This is a council decision on dates. We've already decided on a date. So, unless you've got a different amendment, we will move on.
Yeah, okay, well, I suggest two other amendments. And one is an amendment to C, which is that I think we should ask the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee to review the draft terms of reference for the working group. Rather than endorse them, that we actually ask council that council asks the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. So take out the first bit of the. To review the draft terms of reference. Huh? Yeah. To review the draft terms of reference.
We had a timeline in.
Well, it will be at the next meeting, which we believe is in December, so it should be our iPads say it should be on Monday, though I haven't seen the agenda or anything, but that I believe is meant to be the next date of the next meeting, so it would happen then. And yeah. And that rather than Project Zero have both info and review, we actually change that to that Project 030 is invited to contribute to and advise the working group in the short, medium and long term. Is invited to contribute to and advise the working group in both the short, medium and long term.
Councillor Bailey. Councillor Robinson, that your amendment?
Well, it's too many words of them. Yeah, that's fine. Well, that's fine.
It's been an amendment's been moved by Councillor Robinson. Is there a seconder? So Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Robinson.
Well, the main reason for that, and I would be very interested to know how many of councillors have actually read the draft terms of reference. I've read them and I had some concerns about them. And that is why I feel that it would be very important for the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee to actually review them before and as soon as they're reviewed, they can go to the December council meeting and the expressions of interest can go out. But I think we really need to consider the function of this group, and the terms of reference at the moment simply say that it's a top-down exercise. All the resources, and this is really why Councillor Gray has criticised it, are coming from council. And this is meant to be an emergency for the whole community. It's meant to involve the whole community, and we need to change the terms of reference so that the working group can look for funding, can look for resources, and look to have this implemented. And that's the main function of a climate emergency. It's not something that council does and then tells the community about. It's something that the community is involved with. And the terms of reference simply do not reflect what I understood the climate emergency to be. And the reason for the change D is simply that, again, we do want to speed this up because we've called it an emergency. And therefore, what we should be doing is involving Project 030 right from the beginning and invite them to contribute and advise the working group in the medium and short and long term so that we can get all the input at once, so that we can realise the benefits for this community, because we really do need this. We really need the benefits. We really need the jobs and the growth and all the benefits that this could bring. And also we need to learn how to deal with the problems of learn to adapt to the climate emergency. So let's get on with it. Let's have plans in place. And the sooner we can start developing these plans instead of waiting time and time again, the better. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, I also was a bit concerned about the terms of reference for some of the reasons that I said before. It did seem much more about telling people how to change rather than council changing itself. There is so much support now from New South Wales Government, from local community groups that can show us how we can implement changes in our operations, how we can make the changes that does have an impact on the community. We're one of the biggest employment organisations in the town. We are the governing body. We should be making changes in our operations, not just merely telling people how they should change. So, yes, I was also concerned about that. So I very strongly support Councillor Robinson's amendment.
A speaker against the amendment? Councillor Witters, you got your...
There we go. Just having a look at the amendments for C and D, but also in the original report on page, let me make sure it's on there, on page 21, a timeline outlined below indicates the logistics and steps required in order to provide a quality report back to council with input from a working group. On the proposed timeline, it says the Environmental Sustainability Committee will recommend the things by December, so they'll have it says the OI to council by December, but they'll have a bit of a look then, so they can have they can chuck in any concerns around the terms of reference then, I suppose, as well. And also part D on page 22, there is also Project 030 will have a very strong community engagement aspect, and so we propose a report recommendation to be referred to Project 030 to best utilise opportunities. A communications plan prepared by the staff will also be vital to connect our community with the ideas in the report and the contributions we can all make to reducing our emissions. I think these amendments are unnecessary. I think they're already going to be done on the timeline proposed in the original motion. So to put them in there on something, again, I don't want to, the old saying of we don't want to boil our potatoes twice. So it's already being done. So why do we need the amendments when that's already part of the proposed timeline?
Just the procedural.
Speaker.
Can I just bring up a procedural motion or something, or ask a question?
Yes.
I mean, Councillor Witters just said that it's already been done. It clearly hasn't been done. It's clearly not what happened.
It's been outlined, though, Councillor.
We put in and asked for the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee to review the draft. How can he say that it's already been done? That's not done. It's done. It will be done now in this amendment.
Brian, I think Councillor Witters was referring to the original motion. So, a speaker for the amendment, Councillor O'Connor?
Yeah, I'd just like to support what Councillor O'Brien has raised. I think Councillor Witters, with all good intentions, has actually misunderstood the purpose of the amendment, which is that we enable a speedy implementation of the recommendation in its whole, in its entirety. Let's not lose sight of the fact that this is a recommendation to flesh out the resolution that was passed unanimously at the October meeting of this council to get on with the climate change work. So what the amendment is proposing to do is pretty simple. It's to allow the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, which hasn't had input at this stage, to have input. They're all experts. They've been selected on that committee because they understand these issues. They're ready and right to go. And I'm sure if they've got this work to do, that meeting will be absolutely correct. It'll be more than correct because now they've got something to get their teeth into. There has been some delay in the release of the framework, the green print. There's been substantial delays, and it's not surprising that the very expert people that are on the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee are waiting to get their teeth into some real work. Here it is. So that's part A of the amendment, to allow them to look at those terms of reference and make sure that they are the best possible terms of reference. Because as you would understand, Councillor Witters, this has been put together by staff who are pretty busy with a lot of things at the moment related to, as you've referred to, the drought and the fires. The second point of this amendment is to slightly change the emphasis in relation to Project 030. Project 030 is being, we are partnering with the university in relation to this, but I don't think it's a good look, nor is it practicable for us to actually tell them that they are going to have a supervisory role, if you like, in relation to what council does. It's a collaboration, it's a partnership, but without consulting them, to suggest to them that they're going to be able to review. This amendment is trying to re-establish the collaborative partnership aspect of their involvement in this. That's all the amendment's intended to do, and I think it's a very sensible amendment, and we should just support it and get moving on the rest of the agenda for today.
A speaker against the amendment? Okay, Councillor Gray, you all right to reply?
Okay. I actually agree. I totally agree. Not just actually. I totally agree with Councillor Witters. it is already in the timeline. Can I just use your in that the terms of reference will go to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, and that and the EOI will come back in December. It's already in the timeline to be done. Now, if there is any modifications of the terms of reference, and I'm unsure exactly where it needs to be, because it's broad that in its entirety, that it can be inclusive of so many different people within the community, that, I mean, I would think it was a very well written and very generous terms of reference for a working group. And so I cannot understand why there could be, if there's potentially delays in coming from the Environmental Sustainability Committee up to the agenda in December. And then if it's not passed in December, it's going to delay everything till February. So it's like, let's just get on with this, as you quite rightly want to, Councillor O'Connor. The terms of reference are already going there. It's a redundant amendment. Project 030 is invited to, input and review, invited to contribute and advise. Isn't that what a review is? It's part of the feedback system. They're just redundant. It's semantics on words. That's all this is.
With great respect, Councillor, I think you misunderstood the meaning of the word.
Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Gray, you finished? Yep. Okay, I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those people in favour of the amendment? 3. Those people against? The amendment's lost. I think we've covered the whole motion well enough, so I'll put the motion now. Those people in favour of the motion? And carried, everybody. Thank you. Now we'll go back to 7.1. I've got 2 mayoral minutes. One that you have seen in your notes. A recommendation that Council recognise and thank the RFS for their dedication and commitment to fighting the fires in the region. Council recognise and thank all the agencies that have supported, and Council recognise the resiliency of the communities and the support they pay to each other. Now, you may not be aware of the Council staff commitment to this. It has been considerable and it has been long. There's been many a day when the Council staff have been working, they've been called out at 5 o'clock at night to go and either look after a roadblock or cut water to a fire. They stay there until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So our staff have been heavily committed to this, and in some cases going down the Kempsey Road trying to keep that open for access to our people in Lower Creek is a really worthy commitment by them. But through all of these agencies and their help, I wish to say thank you very much on behalf of the community. I think they've done a wonderful job, and it's been, in some respects, a little bit frightening in some of the fires that have come through. So I guess I hope that you would support such of the recommendations. Anyone? There's no move. Since I moved and I second. Okay, Councillor Morant. Councillor Bailey.
Could I move an amendment, please?
You may put it forward and see.
The council holds an official reception for the Rural Fire Service and the people that volunteered during the fires early in the new year, once we're through the fire system, as a means of saying thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. The difficulty we've got people from every state in Australia. So I take your point. I'll take you and across the ditch. So amendment is hold official reception. Sorry, Councillor.
The council holds an official reception for the Rural Fire Service and other volunteers in February or March, so that we can thank them one-to-one for their outstanding contribution in saving so many of our resources and communities.
Could I modify that, Councillor Bailey, so I can agree to it, which is that all emergency services, because a lot of the emergency services were fully involved rather than just RFS. I'm happy with that amendment. Anyone else wish to? If not, I'll put that. Those people in favour? Unanimous. Councillors, the second Mayoral minute, and I apologise for the lateness of it, but I might just get it put up on the screen. And this is to do with the Irish community of Sydney and the water convoy that came up on Saturday. I thought it was quite pertinent to put it now because of the interest that's been in it and the ability to say thank you to the Irish community in Sydney. And it's also a very good example of the two communities, one from Sydney coming up and supporting a rural-based community. And I must really thank the Rotary of Armidale, the CWA of Armidale, and the Armidale Business Chamber for their real support in getting the organising, and I appreciate the work that some of the councillors put in on the day in sorting through this water, and I really appreciate it. This was all driven really by the Irish community. It was initiated by them. Luckily, one of them used to go to school with a lady that lives in Armidale, and when he suggested he'd love to bring water up to a rural environment or town, she said bring it to Armidale, and it grew from there. So it really has been a terrific example of communities working together, and as I said, I appreciate the Rotary for really taking the reins of this and running with it. It was a community-run event. For your information, all the bulk water which was taken out to put into the dam at the airport, it was primarily put there because the truck drivers had started at about 3 o'clock in the morning or earlier, so they'd run out of time. They could not transport the water up to Glen Innes, which was the original plan. So our staff then rapidly arranged for the trucks to gain access to the dam so they could unload the water in our dam at the airport. As a consequence of that, the LLS, which is where the water was originally going for going back to farmers, have been down to access that water. So the water is actually going towards the purpose in which it was originally intended. We have just provided a temporary storage for that to occur. So that is the motion. I was seconder, Councillor Murat. So, anyone wish to speak for or against? If not, I'll put that. Oh, Councillor Gillilly.
Just curious, seeing this come through and it's public now that this water is available for stock. I presume it's for stock in around the Armidale area. How can these people that because not everybody actually got this good bit of rain that a lot of us did get on the Saturday and Sunday, how do they go about getting a bit of this water from the dam out at the airport?
Thank you, Councillor Gillilly. Anyone interested in getting emergency water for livestock, they go through LLS. There is an emergency telephone number which I can provide to you after the council meeting, and they can ring that number and LLS will provide the water. Okay, I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 8.1, which is the action relating to fire emergencies. Councillor Robinson, you move?
I'll
Can I
move
have
the
a
mo- I'll move the motion, yes.
second?
I was going to add a bit
Councillor
about the...
O'Brien. Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I was going to add a bit about also thanking the Chris Murphy, John Hickey, Peter McMahon and the Rotary Club of Armadale, but that's already been dealt with, so just leave it at the three there. And although, yes, we have in the mayoral minutes, which came out independently, expressed our sincere thanks to all the firefighters, it doesn't hurt to thank everybody twice. The more thanks we have, they've done such a tremendous job that let's thank them again. It doesn't do any harm and it just reinforces our message. And the other messages that really, really are important is not only express our thanks to the people, the emergency services who've saved us in this difficult and trying situation, but also express empathy for the victims because they've been through a really, really hard time and we really need to let them know that we're on their side and we're doing everything we can to help them. And also, of course, we continue, as we are doing, to explore all possible sources of revenue for funding and support from other levels of government. Because this is a really difficult time, and the more help and support we can get, the better. So I commend this motion to you. Some of it is already repeated, but that repeating does no harm. And by expressing empathy and looking for support, we strengthen our motion rather than weaken it, and we show just how united we are as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Robinson, and I guess being a councillor and also having a shop in the middle of the town where people come in and tell you what's going on, the stories have been, heartbreaking. They're just, it's just heartbreaking. People have lost so much. People have lived in a kind of a low level of depression through this drought and then full-blown anxiety through the fires, and with all the smoke coming through, the feeling of, the Armageddon that was around us it's done damage to the heart and soul of people here, and I think showing that we are one with them and we really feel what everyone's going through, including all of us, I think can't be emphasised too much. So yes, I'm one with that. Also, just in terms of while we're thanking, I think just two councillors on the day of the Irish guys. Well, I was busy going around kissing all the Irish truck drivers. Councillor Gillespie and Councillor Morat were doing heavy lifting for many, many, many hours of the day and into the night, and really did show their, their civic spirit, and I want to just draw attention to that, so thank you.
Okay, speaker against? If not, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. 8.2, two-part. A mover, Councillor Gillespie, seconder, Councillor Munn. Councillor Gillespie?
I just think that with this motion we can get the wheels rolling quicker for small businesses in Armadale and just get on with. If we've got a bit of money sitting there to pay them that they need to pay their own bills and get going, because I know things have certainly steadied down in town in our private enterprises with not much money about with the drought. So this is just a good thing to send everybody a bit of a goodwill thing to say that we're trying to get them their money as quick as we possibly can. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Sorry. I just wanted to agree totally with what Councillor Gillespie said. The businesses in town are really struggling at the moment. It's been tough. It's tough on everyone. And I just think this is a good way of us helping and showing that the leadership, that we can actually keep their businesses turning over.
Mr. Speaker against the motion? Is being against, Councillor Bailey? No.
I
You're
I
speaking
was going to
against?
just suggest an amendment, perhaps. No? No.
Okay, if there's no speaker against, I will put that to the vote.
It's very important. This is unique leadership. I'm not aware of any other council in New South Wales that will pay its local creditors of small business within 5 days. And I would hope the media point that out through the Fairfax network to show that we are really trying to help our local businesses. And I think it's a great motion moved by Councillor Gallatley, and we should be very proud to vote unanimously for it.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous. Item 9.1, which is a four-part. Can I have a move and a second? Councillor Morat, Councillor Withers, Councillor Morat.
Mr Mayor, this is pretty much a operational matter just to keep the wheels of progress moving up at Gyra to open up this subdivision. So just commend councillors to vote for it and make it all happen.
Councillor Withers.
Yeah, I'll just concur with what Councillor Murat said, but can I just ask, just quickly, was there any attachments involved with this motion? Because I just had a question. There was? What page was it on? I had a question on what happened with the land claims and whether on that part of the.
Thank you, Councillor Withers. I'll pass to the CEO.
They're still being processed, so there's no information to provide you as yet.
Speaker against? If not, I'll put that. Those in favour? Carried. Councillors, 10.1, the first quarter budget review, 3 parts. Before I get a mover and a seconder, could I just highlight part C? So, Councillor Gray, seconder. Councillor Murat. Councillor Gray?
First of all, thank you to Kelly and her work within the finance team for putting this quarterly budget review forward. It is concerning that with the fire and the drought and the water situation, we're copping it from both sides by the looks of it, by the reduction in revenue and also the increase in costs. So just pointing out that I'm acknowledging the fact that we do have an operating deficit of 4.7, which isn't all that far off the 5 mil mark, and move forward with this review. Thanks.
Councillor Murat?
I'd just like to concur with Councillor Gray. The budget deficit is a reflection of the natural disasters that are currently being placed upon us, and it's a huge cost to council, both in ongoing costs but also in cash flow, because we've got to fund these expenditures every month. So we've just got to recognise that it's sort of issues outside of our control, and hopefully the state and federal government might come forward with some more drought funding to fix those problems.
Thank you, Councillor Murat. Speaker against?
Question, please.
Councillor Bailey.
No question? Questions. The federal government announced drought funding. We were told that we're getting another $1 million. Is there any indication yet as to what that $1 million will go towards? And secondly, there's also money available for additional funding for roads to recovery and also building the Better Regions Fund. Are we any further advanced as to what projects we might put forward and what we're trying to do with it?
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I'll put through the CEO.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. In relation to the $1 million, it's not an automatic $1 million to Armidale Regional Council. We have been invited to apply for that $1 million with proposals of how we intend to spend it. We have a pipeline of projects that we have at the ready, and that will come to council, I think either in December, is it December or June? It has to be in December, yeah, because we've got to have those projects in then. But there is a pipeline that we are preparing in order to apply for that $1 million funding, and likewise the roads to recovery work.
What about the building declaration fund?
Yes, we are.
Just to clarify, I think the CEO is talking about a figurative pipeline, not a water pipeline. So, thank you. Okay, a speaker, I've had a move and second. Speaker against? If not, I'll put that. Councillor O'Connor?
Could I put an amendment? I think in view of the discussion we've just had, I'd like to move an amendment which I hope will be not controversial, which is that in response to item C, the options for approaching the state and federal government for assistance be just brought to a councillor workshop. That's it. No, I'm not changing C, I'm adding a D. Yep, sorry. So it would be that in response to item C above, the options for seeking further assistance from the state and federal governments be brought to a councillor workshop for discussion, obviously, hopefully.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Robinson. So, Councillor O'Connor?
Oh, look, I think it's very important that we've had the experience with the federal government's $1 million drought assistance in the 2018 drought, which I recall Councillor Martin said her concerns were for 2019, and how right she was. That was very much a tied $1 million to 2 or 3 or 4 pages of conditions. And I think that circumstances for our local government area, at least, and many others in similar positions, has changed. I really don't think the state and federal government, they're trying to respond, but I don't think they quite appreciate that 5 years ago we had a rock-solid water and sewage fund that was quite adequate to cover any deficit in our general fund and provide us with a positive consolidated result. At the moment, we've basically had a bulldozer, if you like, or a fire rip through our sustainability in terms of our major and most critical assets, which is water and sewage. So I think it's not just a matter of maybe applying for a bit of funding for this project or that. I think we need, as a council, to be able to come to grips with how we're going to lobby our state and federal members to properly represent the need that we have to address the long-term impacts, financial impacts, that the loss of water revenue has done to our water and sewage fund, and the damage that's being done to our general fund as well as a result of the exertion, the deficits that we're suffering as a result of having to fight, become basically a backup firefighting unit, and the loss of revenue from selling water, which was one of our major income streams to date. So when we have to restrict the sale of water, we restrict our cash flow. And I think we really need to be able to understand this, talk with each other together about this, and be able to present a united front to both state and federal members and governments about the kind of assistance we need. I mean, if it's $1 million on the same basis as what we were offered last year, it really doesn't address our long-term, the impact to our long-term financial sustainability that the current fire and drought emergencies have imposed on us.
Okay, a speaker against the amendment? Now, Councillor Gray, you had the right of reply.
I would like to thank Councillor O'Connor for the amendment, and I think it is something that needs to be very strongly put to the state government, particularly Treasury, to support regional and rural communities, particularly in the light of the drought and the fire. So thank you.
I'll put the amendment. Those people in favour of the amendment? Carried. So I'll put the complete motion. Those people in favour? Carried. Um, 10.2, the hydrotherapy pool. Councillor Gray, sorry, again, I picked Councillor Gray, Councillor Robinson.
Well, I wanted to propose an alternative motion.
Well, hang on, we've got to put it on the books. So, Councillor Gray, did you want to second it, Councillor Robinson?
I can propose
Or do you want amendment?
first.
Councillor Murat. Councillor Gray?
Firstly, I think it needs to be acknowledged that while we have the grant funding, we do not have the cash reserves or the means to do the co-contribution that's required for the hydrotherapy pool. It is sad that when we were putting forward for this funding, that we were under the belief that there would be co-contribution ability, but that's obviously not the case, and the situation's got even worse with the in light of the quarterly review. We do need assistance. If we're going to make this happen for our community, we will need to do it with other parties. We cannot do it on our own as a council. And we also have to do it in a way that does not create a financial liability to ratepayers. And having been in the industry for a long time, swimming pools are only viable when they have a commercial operation within them. And so I see that this proposal, this recommendation, flows from one to the other, that there is scope to either have assistance with Hunter New England Health. I hear a wry laughter from my colleague. Or we have some sort of commercial arrangement. And thinking of the wider region, the option of having a wider recreational facility seems very, very attractive if we can have the right partner come forward to help fund and design and construct such a facility for the whole of the region. Therefore, I think with all the options there, I think that we can at least have something that the community can gain for the long term. We do need a facility such as this, particularly in light of our growing population and people from very diverse communities, and some of them where they've never experienced water. So water safety, again, is something that is we need to see as a priority, and in that is learn to swim classes, etc. And so let's have a facility that's available for the community and the region 12 months of the year.
Councillor Murat.
I pretty much concur with Councillor Gray. We do need to find partners to be able to push a project like this forward. I don't think council can undertake it under its own merit. So to go out and try and identify some suitable partners is a logical step. I don't agree that some of the partners were mentioned are going to come on board. They've sort of been a bit negative about it, but there must be other people out there that may be a possible candidate to partner with council to develop something the community needs.
So, Speaker against, Councillor Bailey.
Amendment? I think what we need to do is the following: that councillors form a subcommittee to urgently look at the options to ensure the hydrotherapy pool goes ahead as part of the Moncton Aquatic Centre, and look at the options of an expanded and enlarged gym, a hydrotherapy pool of 25 metres, and options for outsourcing the management and operation of the complex. Now, I can give you a copy of that if that would be helpful. We've got the money already. You can read hieroglyphics. Can I explain? Like Councillor Gray, I've had an interest in this for quite a period of time. I've had discussions with Hunter New England Health, who, how would I put it politely, show little interest in hydrotherapy pools and see them as a cost. And what about out of them? They've got their present facility at the hospital closed, and it spends more time closed than it's open. It leaks water, and every time they have a problem, they close it for weeks. So I don't think it's going to be viable for Hunter New England Health. I did some phoning around. I found that there's two groups. There's YMCA, and there's another group on the coast called Community Aquatics, just to name but two. And I'm sure Councillor Gray could come up with names also, that do run these sorts of facilities. The facility at Nambucca, in the Nambucca Shire at Maxville, is a hydrotherapy pool of 17 metres, a gym, and an old Olympic pool, just like our Olympic pool is old. And they have managed to maintain the subsidy to the operator at about $200,000 a year. And when you consider that we're presently paying $223,000 for the Armidale pool in terms of a deficit, and a further $126,000 for the Gyra complex, I think any move we can move to outsource the project would be worthwhile. And if we've got to look at options such as closing one of the Olympic pools, because we've got two, closing one of the Olympic pools and building a hydrotherapy pool and a bigger gym, I think we'll have a very commercially viable option for the future. The reason I'm suggesting that the councillors form a subcommittee quickly and we do something quickly, I realise there's timelines, but I'm sure we're all prepared to go into bat and come back hopefully in the near future so that we can go to the government with a viable alternative. And I think part of the viable alternative will be a bigger complex that has more appeal to the community.
Can I have a seconder for Councillor Bailey's, Councillor O'Connor? So Councillor O'Connor?
Oh, look, I think what Councillor Bailey suggested has a lot of sense to it, and it actually encompasses part of what this motion is about. I'm quite concerned, and I would foreshadow an amendment to Councillor Bailey's proposed motion to actually confirm that Council does want to retain the benefit and indicate its retention of the $1.09 million, and that we make that commitment. So that would be my preference, that the mover include that as a second, as part of this motion, so that there's no doubt that we want to get on with this quickly. Look, Tamworth has at least 2 hydrotherapy pools. I mean, it's absolutely critical. We all know people who need a hydrotherapy pool. I've just come back from a place where there are, you know, networks of hydrotherapy, hot pools and saunas. They're an incredibly important part of many communities, not just for those that are disabled, but for the general health of the community as well. And I agree with Councillor Bailey that if we get onto this and seek a commercial partner or another public partner, another institution, we must be able to make progress in this, and we owe it to the community to do this, because, you know, to have injured people in our community unable to get hydrotherapy is a disgrace. And we've got the $1 million. Let's add to it in whatever means we can and get on with doing this in a fast track manner. That's all I want to say. And this motion, as Councillor Bailey's put forward, subject to any comments from anybody else around the table here, plus the confirmation of our interest in retaining the existing grant, I think will get us started.
A speaker against the, and it is an amendment, not a motion.
Now, I don't want to speak against it, but I do want to make another suggestion, which I believe was Councillor Bailey's intention, that he says that council forms a subcommittee of councillors. Well, it's not on the... Might I... Yeah? A subcommittee of councillors. That council forms a subcommittee.
I said 5 councillors.
Councillor Robinson, are you making amendment to the amendment?
No, that was... I also wanted to ask a question while I've got the microphone in relation to this issue, because it's probably will help us with our deliberations, even though I believe there is a general consensus. And this was, as we see, that there's a picture here of the cheque of the being handed over for the $1.093 million. And I happened to look at our budget papers, and I noticed in the May workshop that we had $607,331,000 of external funding deferred to the 2021 financial year. And I'm just wondering, and perhaps staff, through Mr. Mayor, you can enlighten us as to what about the balance of the $485,865?
I'll pass this to the CEO.
Councillor, we can take that on notice, but I am assuming that you're looking at the first financial year, expenditure of 600,000 for the first financial year if we were to proceed with building the hydrotherapy pool. But I don't have the documentation in front of me, and we would need to take that on notice.
And I was talking 21, so it's...
Okay, a speaker against the amendment?
Sorry, I don't
O'Connor,
think... I'm not
you've actually
speaking against
seconded
it.
this and you've spoken, so unless
No,
it's a
excuse me, I just
clarification...
want... My suggested amendment is not up on the board, and I think there was agreement from the mover. The retention of the original grant.
Okay, I'll put, is there a speaker against the amendment? Councillor Witters?
Just a question, I suppose. I've written down, what is the governance value and application of the amendment in regards to the, and maybe someone can answer my question, in regards to the subcommittee of 5 councillors being formed? I would, and again, would think that this is more of an operational matter. If there is value for the half of the governance team, which is the councillors, to put that in, that's fine. But yeah, what is the value and the application around that in regards to this matter? If that question makes sense.
The CEO?
Through you, Dr. Mayor, I'm assuming the formation of a subcommittee of council would make recommendation to council for final decision. As far as I'm aware, there's no provision for subcommittees to exercise financial delegations.
Speaker against? If not, Councillor Gray, you have right.
I have a question as well, because I'm a bit concerned around how that subcommittee would operate, knowing that we have terms of references for working groups, etc. Because if the intention is for councillors to visit other sites and do some hands-on physical research around options, there will be a cost associated with that. And that then raises questions as to how that would be met.
Sure you, I usually pay for my own petrol
So-
when I go to site.
Councillor O'Connor, CEO, can you provide comment on that?
I'm sorry, councillor, would you mind repeating that? I guess I was a bit distracted for the moment.
The question is around the subcommittee, knowing that we normally have to have terms of references for any of that sort of thing, and that if the intention is that councillors, with all great intention, want to go and visit other sites and have research around options, there would no doubt be a cost associated with that, and I would not like to see that this would put added expense onto our already limited funds. So I'm not sure if that would involve a cost to council. That's the question. Would it involve a cost for council?
The short answer, Dr. Mayor, is I don't know. And as Councillor Gray points out, it would depend on the terms of reference. I think if the amendment were with a desire of council, I would need to obviously allocate some support to that subcommittee, and one of its first jobs would be to develop the appropriate terms of reference for endorsement by council, and that may include some estimate of any financial impost that might be incurred by the subcommittee.
So, Councillor Gray, you're right. Unless you've got a question, Councillor Robinson?
I've got a question, and really revolves around this $1.093 million that we've already received. And my understanding was we had to enter discussions with the New South Wales government by the 29th of November. And have we got assurances that the funding will be available for the purposes that we hope it's going to be available for?
CEO?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Firstly, we haven't received the money. We have been given a commitment that that money would be available should we proceed with the project as originally submitted and scoped. We have been in discussion with the department, the state government, and we have flagged to them that there is some question about how we might proceed with the hydrotherapy pool, but no, we don't have any assurance necessarily that they will extend the expenditure of it.
So,
to the amendment, which says that council seeks the support of the New South Wales government to retain the to use the 1.093 million funding for a new hydrotherapy pool of some form in Armidale.
Yeah, no, but we've got to say it explicitly, Peter. We've got to say it explicitly. Yes, we do.
So, Councillor O'Connor, please. So, Councillor Robinson, can you repeat your amendment of an amendment?
That council seeks the support of the New South Wales government to retain the 1.093 million funding for a hydrotherapy pool. I'm just concerned that if we don't say that, then we may be more likely to lose it. If the subcommittee has to go to the next council meeting in February, then it may be too late. To ensure the commitment of 1.093 million funding for hydrotherapy in Armidale. 1.093 million.
So, Councillor Robinson, this will be a foreshadowed amendment.
Well, it was. Yeah, it will be because foreshadowed amendment.
So, before
the movement doesn't accept it.
before I even ask for a second, I'll go back to the original amendment, and I'll have called for anyone speaking against it. There's been none, so, so I'll ask Councillor Gray for a right of reply.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I understand this sentiment with this amendment, and I actually believe it may well be way too specific in its options, part of it, and I'm at this point the subcommittee option is there's too many unknowns in that. I believe that the Hunter New England Health should have the right to have first bite at the cherry if they so choose. Therefore, offering them.
Councillors, Councillor Gray has the floor.
And
Councillor Connor,
and
Councillor Gray.
Can you just note a point of order, please?
Councillor Connor, you can do. Councillor Connor, she's already started her right of reply. So, Councillor Gray. So you're moving a point of order, so let's a procedural motion. Who have a seconder? Okay, those in favour? Those against? So it's 5, isn't it? The casting vote? No. So, Councillor Gray, sorry.
I will reiterate that I do understand the intent and the of the amendment. I do have concerns regarding the options being too specific, particularly if it means that it's not cost effective to meet those exact requirements. The subcommittee is too many unknowns at this point. I do believe that Hunter New England Health does have, should have the right to have first refusal. I won't use the analogy or the metaphor of fruit. Apparently they don't like fruit. And that with the other options, I believe that they are covered when we're talking about some of the specifics. They're having options are covered in point B and point C. I do understand that everybody here does get that this is, to have this go forward, we will need to be in partnership with another commercial entity of some sort, and that it will need to be a commercial operation to be viable for the community, the region, and for ratepayers, and not be a burden financially on the community now, in the short-term future and the long-term future. And if all else fails and we do not get those expressions of interest, which I would be quite surprised because it can be quite an attractive business opportunity for the right person, that we have something in place to review what we currently have and look at what possibilities there will be around generating or providing the community with an indoor heated pool that would be available 12 months of the year to the whole of the region.
Okay, I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those people in favour of the amendment? 5, 6. Those against? The amendment's carried. No, because the amendment was in place of all of those. That's why I read it. Now, moving on to item 11.2.
Before you go, Mr. Mayor, do we need to vote on a subcommittee?
There's nothing in that, sorry, councillor, there's nothing in the motion, amendment that was put. Councillors, 10.3, sorry, that's the water excess card fee as you read in the recommendation, so it was supplementary. So mover,
No, well, I'd like to move an alternative motion, if I may. And that alternative motion is that the $100 water access card fee is recovered as a $10 initial payment and an additional charge of $1.10 for every kilolitre of water purchased using the card.
before we go on that, I'd just like to know what the implications of that on a operational point. So if I can get that direction from the CEO before after asking for a seconder. Thanks. Councillor, Scott, could you pass comments on this, please?
Reduce it from $100 to $10?
No, we change the proposal is to charge the $100 fee, but you pay it off as you buy the water. So it's the same fee, exactly the same fee.
I think there would be additional back office costs. I can't say to you now what that would be. The $100 was calculated on that administration back office cost. When people get an access card, they're loading it up with water as it is. So they'll be putting a certain amount of water on. I think it's 8,400 litres. So those costs are, all those costs and fees are charges that we suggest and put on public exhibition reflected the work that the council has to do. I think if anybody has hardship, they can always come to council, but I don't see the point of making it a new fee or a new way to pay that charge.
And Scott, does it have to go back to public exhibition?
Well, the figure would still be the same. We didn't put in the public exhibition. We put in the public exhibition that would have to be paid up front. So my belief that it probably would have to go, not probably, it would have to go back to public exhibition.
So I'll go back to a move and a second of the motion as is. Councillor Witters and Councillor Gray. So Councillor Witters.
Thank you. Just having a look at this. I note that we received 8 submissions in regards to this from the community. I thank them for putting them in. Again, my concerns out of this is with 8 submissions, it's the smallest of a small minority in regards to the region putting in their submissions, and I note that 4 out of the 8 are either unknown location or not even in our local government area. One is from Uralla, and there's 3 others that are unknown, their location, based off that. Again, I think I moved the motion in regards to this at the last meeting. And everything I said then, even though I believe I jumped the gun to begin with, now everything I said in that first part of it now stands true. I think it's a good way to make sure that the people who need the water for the right reasons are getting the water for the right reasons. With anything in life, there's usually a cost to maintain that. And what it does is it takes out the amount of frustration that's been expressed to me within the community of people taking water from places like the Arboretum and everywhere else that we can get it, to put on their gardens while other people are struggling to have proper water use at home, has been ridiculous. And the amount of support in regards to making sure that something's done so that it's not taken advantage of, that has been expressed to me numerous times. I actually lost count the amount of times people have come up and said how frustrated they are that people are still being so selfish and worrying about minor things. Yes, a lot of people put it into their gardens, but they can come back. What we need is the water to get to the right places for the right reasons. And yeah, it's just the frustration that has been expressed within the community around the abuse of these water stations. So I think everything I said at the start of the motion from the October meeting still stands, and I believe, I'll just leave it at that.
Can I have a point of order, please? I've just checked the public exhibition and it does not say anything about paying the card fee up front. Therefore, my original motion should be allowed to be seconded.
You put you're proposing an amendment.
It was an amendment, but I'm just checked and I've noticed that there is nothing about paying the fee up front.
So, Robinson, if we change anything, it still has to go back to the public for 28 days.
Why? I mean, it's exactly the same as what was on public exhibition. The only difference is the method of payment. Afterpay is perfectly legal.
Well,
it doesn't change the price.
The advice I've got is it'll go back to 28 days, therefore it'll come to the February meeting, because the December meeting's only in 2 weeks' time. So
could you please explain why? Because I cannot see it for the life of me any difference.
So, what Pastor just got?
No, I don't do that. I think we would be criticised for putting one piece of exhibition out and then, like it or not, we are varying what we originally put up. So I think council would always be cautious and put it back up to public exhibition.
Saying then that we can't drop the water access charge at all, or do anything else, that just because we put up an exhibition of a charge, we can't actually drop it or reduce it?
Well, this is a decision for council now, but council is considering what was put up for public exhibition.
So, Councillor Robinson, you want to make an amendment?
Well, I'm just trying to understand the legal implications of this. Why, if we do something that's less onerous on our residents by allowing them to pay in instalments, that would need another public exhibition, because I've never seen anything that suggests that before.
Might just get the CEO to provide comment.
Dr. Mayor, I suggest that none of us are in a position to necessarily be definitive about whether we do need to go back out to public exhibition or not, and we can formally seek advice from a qualified legal practitioner on that. But my understanding is, while the mode of payment might have been silent in the initial paper that went out for public exhibition, where we are varying it, irrespective of whether irrespective of the charge, where we're varying the mode of payment or varying what was originally proposed by council, we have to give the public opportunity to comment upon it.
Yeah, well, I'll just say I still don't understand that, because the mode of payment was not on public exhibition.
Councillor Robinson, we've already clarified. Next, so Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. While I understand that this may create hardship for some rural residents, I do understand that we need to have some system in place to monitor the water that's being pumped out and where it's going, and ensuring that there are people within our region that are receiving that water. I do believe that the $100 is a reasonable amount when you consider that that $100 is calculated to cover the cost of the card, the administration fees, the processing the application, etc. So I also think that it's very reasonable when considering that residents on the water network pay an annual fee of $225 per year. This is just a one-off. And if it assists and if it's doable, I am quite happy to make sure that if there is any whatever monies or allocations to council education for myself, I'm quite happy to put it into the hardship bucket for water access for our rural residents. And if that helps support them, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, speaker against the motion, Councillor O'Connor.
Look, I just have a question, and that is, we've had a lot of debate about really it's about hardship, and I think it's a legitimate concern. If there could be some response from the administration as to whether this $100 access fee could be the subject of a hardship application, so that, you know, other arrangements could be entered into on a one-on-one basis. There may be some households that don't have a spare $100, and we can't deny them water on that basis. There may be others for whom it's not a difficulty. So if there was the possibility of a matter arising from this, whichever way the vote goes, that the $100 upfront charge, which is being debated at the moment, could be the subject of a hardship application. I think that might assist us in the debate.
I think it's like every fees and charges, Councillor O'Connor, that people can put a hardship request in. This will be no different. So,
can I have that from the CEO?
CEO?
Yes, through you, Dr. Mayor. That is quite correct. Like all fees and charges owed to the council, we're always open to a hardship application on a case-by-case basis. I think our General Manager Business has mentioned it, and it was in the original report as well.
Okay, speaker against the motion? If not, I'll put...
hang on.
Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, well, I'd certainly like to put in an amendment that council informs the community that cases of hardship will be considered.
Is that required, Councillor Robinson, which is it's a general, already known fact about fees and charges? So, Councillor Robinson, they need to know. It's been a long-term practice.
Well,
so,
in this particular case, it's probably worth letting them know. It doesn't do any harm because they'll be informed at the same time as they put in their application.
So just before, do I have a seconder? So, Councillor Robinson. Okay. Your reasoning, Councillor Robinson?
Well, the reason for informing the community is that there were we had 8 submissions, and all these submissions really were concerned about hardship. And council does put proposals on public exhibition because it believes it's important to listen to the concerns of our community. And these concerns were only too evident from the fact that every single one of those submissions was concerned about hardship, and every single one of those submissions opposed that fee. People who take the time and trouble to make submissions normally represent the tip of an iceberg. And there was an Armadale Express article specifically talking about other people who were also very, very concerned about the hardship. I really don't believe we want to be a council that doesn't listen to our community and one that isn't prepared to make decisions. In this case, all we know about those submissions is simply a list of them. We haven't even been able to read those submissions, so we don't know what they say or what sort of hardship they describe. And really, before making a decision on this fee, I'd certainly like to suggest that we should have been able to read those submissions. And yes, I believe it's very, very important to introduce a card to stop the abuse, because we really invited that abuse by charging substantially less for our water than the bulk water charge at Urella. You know, I mean, if you're in Arding or in Invergowrie and you can get water for the $3.90 in Armadale and you have to pay $5 for bulk water in Urella, even though you belong to Urella Council, why on earth wouldn't you want to abuse the system? We invited the problem in the first place, and we should maybe have had a bit more sense than to get ourselves into this difficulty. We could have issued that card for free a month ago and stopped the abuse and saved ourselves a lot of water and the possibility of running short of water and increasing and having to, for example, use recycled water, which will cost far, far more in the long run. We're talking about, for commercial supply, even commercial supply of treated water from the sewage plant, if you go and pick it up, $7 a kilolitre. We're not giving the right incentives to save water, and that's a real, real shame. So I really hope that at least we can inform the community, we can listen to our community and inform them that in cases of hardship, and they'll find out by simply putting a little note on the application fee, that we will consider their hardship. And maybe this will at least help some of the less well-off members of our community.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, I'm always concerned about decisions that are basically based on punishing everyone because of a few, the abuse of a few. I think that's always a dangerous and kind of lacking in compassion kind of policy. And 8 submissions is not nothing. It's not the only kind of words we've heard around this. We've heard it in letters to the paper, we've heard it around town, and I must hear completely different people to Councillor Witters, because I'm hearing much, much more from people who are really concerned about the charge than I am worried that people are worried about other people might be using it for the wrong thing. So I think anything that ensures that there are no obstacles to people who have access. I'm sure we have to pay for it, but let's not put obstacles to access. So I'll support the amendment, and I was going to actually argue against it anyway. So, yeah, thank you.
A speaker against the amendment? Okay. Councillor Witters, you have a right of reply.
A couple of things. If we all spoke to the same people, then we wouldn't represent the diversity of the community. Second thing is, like, the concept behind the amendment of informing those people that need it, that they can apply through the hardship, is fine, but it's again a case of potatoes and boiling them twice. If we're already doing it, why do we need to put up there? But I'm happy to support that part of the amendment.
Okay, I'll put the amendment. Those people in favour? Those against? Carried. So putting the full motion, those people in favour? Those people against? It's carried.
Can I just, while we've got people here, and on the water subject, can I just ask a quick little question that sort of in one of my case scenarios? What's the difference between, if you've got pets that need water, e.g. horses and dogs, what's the go with them? Are they classed as stock, or are they, so if you're using town water and you're out in the bush but you've got half a dozen horses and half a dozen dogs and you're buying water in town, what's the situation there with someone that might know up the front there?
I might pass this on to Scott. Sorry, through you.
I think council doesn't look at it from how a person might use it out of the network. They would look at it to say the whole community's been expected to ask to be come down to 160 litres. If that would be household use, if people choose to use it for a pet rather than, or pet as well as their washing, well, that's their affair. But when it comes to stock or stock and domestic, that starts to fall under the 2012 Water Act, and you'd start to fall into all that. Have you got a licence? Have you got entitlements? Have you got an allocation? So that's not the affair of local government, that would come into state government. But as a household, how you choose to use it is your affair. If you drink nothing and you give it to your favourite horse or dog or guinea pig, that's your personal choice.
So, Councillor Gillett, did that answer your question?
It certainly has, and because a lot of people treat their horses better than they treat their children. Thank you.
So, councillors, moving on to item 11.2, a two-part motion. Can I have a move, please? Councillor Morat. Councillor Witters. Councillor Morat.
Again, this is pretty much an operational matter. It deals with some leftover baggage from a previous motion we put at another meeting. It's to do with the development of the Services Club Hotel and the adjustment of land around that area. So it's just needs to be done to get that project to move ahead.
Councillor Witters. Speaker against? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Oh, can I, because it's a planning matter, can I have your hands up, please? For? That's unanimous. Item 11.3, which is renaming of a public building, the Gyra Community Hall. Have a mover, Councillor Gray, Councillor Morat, Councillor Gray.
I think this is a lovely gesture to recognise a local family and somebody who's represented the Gyra Shire Council for so many years. So I totally support this recommendation.
Councillor Morat. Speaker against? If not, I'll put that. Councillor O'Connor.
I'm just going to say that I have a feeling there's going to be fallout from this, but I intend to vote for it and see what happens.
He's in the Labor Party.
Councillor, I believe it's been out for public exhibition for some time. So, so those in favour of the motion? Unanimous. Okay, we've got items 11.1 right through to 16.1 for information. 13.1, not 11.1. 13.1 to 16.1 are information. I'd like to treat them in globo, except I suggest that we do have a representative to talk about the audited financial statement, if someone wishes to pull that out. You want to pull that out? Okay. No, this is just and it's not really procedure. They identify they want to pull it out. Otherwise, so can I move and second the rest of the items going in globo? Councillor Gray, Councillor Morat, those in favour? Carried. So item 13.1, can I have a move and a seconder, please? So Councillor Gray, Councillor Morat. Councillor Gray?
No comment. It went through the audit, and other than to say that it went through the audit and risk committee as well, and it's pretty much a procedure that we need to and process that we need to go through.
Councillor Morat? Councillors, I will offer the opportunity if anyone wants questions of the audit results. Negative? Okay. I'll put that, and there's no speaker against. I'll put that, otherwise I'll put that to vote. Those people in favour? Carried. So thank you for coming along for the viewing.
Mr. Mayor, if there's a presentation, I'd very much like to hear it.
So, yes, you're welcome to give a presentation. It might be enlightening.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mayor. My understanding is as part of the Local Government Act that the auditor needs to come to a council meeting. And so I'm Jeff Allen's my name. I'm an audit partner at Forsyths. We are the audit service provider for the audit office, and I'd send Chris Harper's apologies, he couldn't make it today. And I'm here just to give you a short presentation on the audit, which is now completed. You lodged your accounts on time. The Audit Office issued unqualified audit opinions on the general purpose, special purpose, permissible income and roads to recovery reports. That means in the Audit Office, in our opinion, the accounts are true and fair. You've complied with the Local Government Act and the accounting standards. Just some quick slides on the income statement. You'll see that council made some $15.3 million this year. Revenue was up by some 12.6 and expenses down by some 5.9. Revenue, the grants were up, mainly due to the Malpas pipeline, some RFS grants, roads and bridges funding, and some R2R. The rates mainly up due to rate pegging, domestic waste, sewer and water charges. Moving on to the balance sheet, you'll note that the total current assets have improved this year, and that's mainly due to an increase of cash and investments of some $4 million. You'll note that the current liabilities decreased, and that's to do with the aged care bonds up at Gyra, that you no longer have those reduced. The increase in your IPP&E, I think you spent about $29.6 million on renewal and new assets. You had disposals of about 3.8, depreciation of 18.2 million, and some revaluation of mainly of water and sewer of 6.1, giving you a $13.7 million improvement in your assets. Of your $69.3 million in cash at year end, there was some 59.7 million of it is externally restricted. So that's water and sewer and specific purpose grants, etc., that you can't necessarily spend on anything else. The 7.7 of internal restrictions, they mainly have to do with capital works at year end, and that gave you some $1.9 million of unrestricted cash. Moving on to the next one. The ratios, just going through them quickly. So the operating performance ratio, so you had a positive, you're above benchmark this year. The operating performance ratio looks at your profit, takes off your capital grants, looks at your revenue, takes off the capital grants, then goes, what percentage did you make? So a positive percentage is a good result. The own source revenue, so this looks at when you take out the grants, how much of your revenue is actually from your own sources. And you can see you're above the 60%, and again, that's the benchmark across the state. The unrestricted current ratio, so that looks at your current liabilities, and it effectively says for every dollar of current liability you have, how many dollars of unrestricted cash. And the benchmark is to have $1.5 of unrestricted cash for every dollar of liability, and you can see you're up over the 2. So you meet that benchmark as well. The debt service cover ratio, so this tries to give you a bit of an idea of your borrowing capacity or your serviceability of your debt. And it looks at your profit and effectively the repayments and borrowing costs against that. Sort of gives you you can see you're above the 2 benchmark, or 2 times. So potentially there's some capacity there. Or you could look at it to say that you're meeting your current borrowings quite comfortably. The rates and annual charges outstanding percentage. So this actually looks at all of the rates and annual charges you levied last year. What percentage of them are still outstanding at year end? And you can see you had a slight improvement, which must mean you're chasing your debts when they become payable. The benchmark is 10%. Most of our regional councils, we've actually seen an increase due to the drought, where this ratio has blown out a little bit. The last ratio there really looks at how many months of cash do you have for the expenditure that you're incurring, and you can see the benchmark is to have at least 3 months cash, and you're up around about the 12 months cash, so comfortably pay your debts. Moving on to the next slide.
We were in a slightly better position. Would that be correct?
It does, yep. Yep. So it's an indicator of how much cash you've got to cover your expenditure, and it's just trying to give you a feel for, like if you were down around the 2, you'd have concerns about whether you actually had enough cash to pay your bills.
2017 and 18, we well and truly met that ratio. There was no problem there. Thank you.
Yeah. Are the 17-18 results influenced in any way by the amalgamation funds that we received at the time? We're unaware of that.
Oh, look, off the top of my head, I couldn't give you the specifics there, but yes, it does impact. It did impact your ratios. Yeah, did impact the profitability in the prior year.
Jeff, that cash, is that both restricted and unrestricted, or
in that particular ratio? Yeah.
Right. So it's not the.
So that ratio is just trying to look at, do you actually have a cash flow problem in the short term, and the ratio is indicating that you don't have a cash flow issue in the short term. Moving on to the next slide. So the Audit Office presented a report to Parliament. The last report went in February 2019. I encourage people to read that. One of the advantages the Audit Office have is they look at all 144 councils, and they can actually draw conclusions about financial reporting, performance, asset management. They've also put a data visualisation tool on their website, and this actually allows you to compare your council to similar councils, to the state councils, etc. It's actually quite a good tool. Moving on to the next one. So this year's audit report, these are the focuses that they're focusing on this year, and they've collected a lot of data across all 144 councils about gifts and benefits and fraud, credit cards, cyber security, the new accounting standards and the preparedness of councils to adopt those, infrastructure and IT general controls. In addition to doing financial audits, the Audit Office also do performance audits. So these are when they actually go in and compare councils on specific areas, non-financial areas. So you can see in the last year they've done development applications, domestic waste, and some workforce reforms in relation to amalgamations. Again, those reports are available. This year their plan is to do performance reports on credit cards, development contributions and voluntary planning agreements, and the management of procurement. And then going forward to the next year, audit and risk committees, cyber security and rural water supplies, sewerage and fees and charges. And really that's the end of my presentation, short and sweet. I'd like to thank Kelly and Brad and the team for providing all the information, making the audit easy, well, relatively easy. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And looking at some of those indices, we look like we're heading in the right direction as a council, which is, I'm not sure how it's going to pan out with the current costs we seem to be incurring from the drought and the fires.
Yes, that'll be interesting to see. But,
Yeah.
Council, a lot of those ratios are quite positive. So.
Yep. Councillor Robertson, you had a question?
Question about some of the carryover methods of accounting. I mean, because we have carried over some funds from last year to this year, and how do we manage that in our previous audited accounts?
So, carryover funds, you'll find if you go to note 6 of the accounts in the internal restrictions, I believe that's where council have accounted for the funds they've carried over. How these are managed internally, I'll pass that back to the general manager. But that's where they're disclosed. So,
Councillors, any other questions? Otherwise, Jeff, thank you very much for coming and presenting.
Okay.
So, councillors, moving on to 16.2. Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee minutes. Can I move for a second, please? Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Murad. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Brien, do you mind turning your mic?
Sorry, I got a bit relaxed there. Thought I was at home. I think one thing to draw attention to is the Access Advisory Working Committee. We're going to be advertising for that now. So basically draw attention to that, and that'll be a new sort of working party to talk about access issues in the community and disability issues. So that's all. Thank you.
I might just get the CEO to clarify. You're saying forming working parties within your committee?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Muir. The management comment there just highlights to the council that none of the advisory committees actually have as part of their terms of reference the ability to create working parties, and this council would need to endorse that, and the council would need to appoint, approve the terms of reference and appoint to the working party.
Is this what this is doing? Asking for the council to pass this, that this working party be formed? Isn't that what this is doing?
I think, Councillor O'Brien, you'd need to make a formal request, or your committee, for that to happen. That was part of the push we're having for reforming the committees that we discussed some time back. But might just ask the CEO to clarify.
Councillor, if I might make a suggestion, that if the council endorse the minutes, that the next meeting of the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee develops some terms of reference to come back for endorsement and a process to appoint to that working party at the next council meeting.
Right. Councillor O'Brien, you happy with that? Yeah. Councillor Moran? Speaker against? Otherwise, I'll put that. Those in favour? Carried. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gray.
It's not so much against. I just wanted to clarify that what you shared there through the Mayor's CEO, that the working parties cannot be formed based on these minutes. Is that what you're saying? They have to go through the proper procedure of recommendation coming to council, terms of reference being set, just the same as the working group for the climate change? Is it the same sort of process? Am I? So if we pass these minutes, are we saying that they can bypass that? No.
Sorry, I mean, if I may. I was suggesting to the chair of the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee that at her next committee meeting, which I believe is tomorrow, that the committee develop the terms of reference to come to the December meeting for endorsement, and then we can proceed to establish the working party if the council so resolves.
Councillor's been passed. So moving on to 16.3, which is the Traffic Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Martin, Councillor Morant, Councillor Martin. Speaker against?
Yep.
Councillor Withers?
I noticed that they haven't fixed up the southbound lane again from the Northern Lights, and this again annoys me because I was nearly run over by a troop carrier coming down that way who decided to, I was first in line at the lights heading south. He decided to come around, about 4 different cars speeding along and nearly run me over in my car, and I believe that little small section of second lane on the southern side of Erskine Street heading down Mars Street really needs to be done away with to stop people coming all the way from about 7 or 8 cars deep to shoot up the left-hand side and squeeze their way in, because if it's not sorted out, there's going to be a severe accident on that corner, and I tend to try and avoid that corner as much as possible nowadays.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Withers, for your information on that. So I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Carried. So moving on to item 18. No, we're done. Yeah, no, we're done on this. Don't get too carried away. The 18.1 questions all been answered. So
could I just ask a question about 18.1, notice 1 from Councillor O'Brien? And the answer is yes, levels 2 and 3 will be updated. Can we have a timeline when that might be updated? CEO?
It's a question I will defer to the General Manager of Organisational Development. It is a question of time and resource to just update the website.
So, councillors, thank you. No, I think they've been answered, and I think we need to go for a break.
No, excuse me, I think that these are important matters, and if we need to break for a toilet break, that's fine.
Gara thing?
Gara do. The Gara meeting, it says it started at 3 o'clock. I'm a bit confused because it says 4 in some places, and I believe the resolution of council was that we start meetings at 4. I just want to clarify. I mean, the answer here says yes, we start at 3, so I'm not sure why.
It was to allow time to go and have some pre-Christmas get-together.
Oh, now I feel embarrassed because we've put stuff.
Because it was called, I think it's because it was called a Gara thing. So I'm not referring, yes. So, we're going to start the meeting at 3 so we can end the meeting early so we can go and have some pre-Christmas get-together.
Can I make a suggestion that we actually update the calendar on our iPads as well, and just in case some people turn up late?
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. A good call. Councillors, can I request that we take a 5-minute break and come back at 20 past? So, Councillor Move, Councillor Gray, Councillor Withers, those in favour? Yeah. Thank you.
I have a matter that a comment I want to make in relation to question 5 in the item 18.1 that we haven't finished. It's just the answers to questions on notice.
That was answered already, Councillor Connor.
No, it was not. Well, I didn't want to stop you going to the places that you needed to go on an urgent basis. But what I do want to make is a very short, but I hope helpful comment, which is that the question on notice number 5 related to a ruling that that Councillor Robinson's motion was unlawful or illegal or whatever. Now, you refused debate or question or anything on that ruling in the last meeting. We finally got a form of explanation. Why can we not have that given at the time the matter is brought up, when it first hits the agenda? It is just so complex and irritating to make councillors who in good faith are putting notices of motion or questions on notice up to just say illegal and refuse to comment, refuse any debate. You know, it is just the most frustrating process for councillors, and it's not necessary. So my plea here in private is that, or close to private, is that we just treat each other with a bit more respect and offer explanations so that local government is complicated and there's so many codes to comply with. I'm not blaming anybody, but really just give people the courtesy of explaining why their motion was ruled unlawful. You know, why do we have to wait 5 weeks for that and go through a lot of angst and trouble over it? I wasted time writing an email to the CEO about it. I mean, it's just, I'm sure she didn't need that trouble, and I didn't need it either. So let's just, this is a plea for a little bit more transparency, cordiality, and openness between us.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Yep. We've got someone moved and seconded, haven't we, that we go into closed session? So, did we? So, Councillor Morat, Councillor Gray, those in favour? Good. the voted on in closed session be adopted in open session. Those people in favour? Great. So, councillors, that is the end of the meeting. So thank you very much for your attendance. Now, our next meeting is in only 2 weeks' time, less than 2 weeks' time. So we'll see you in sunny Caira.